The story of Brian Ortega is different. Normally, I'd start talking about how great a fighter Brian is, or how he has a really cute face and deep blue eyes that drive ladies nuts. But I'm not going to do all that because the story of Brian is beyond his career and good looks. It's about what he's been through to be the best in everything that he does. In this video, we'll be diving deep into the life of Brian Ortega, his rise in the UFC, and how he's managed to survive so many obstacles in his path to success. We'll also be looking at his earnings, net worth, and lifestyle outside the octagon. Did you know Brian's also a Hollywood actor? Well, if you didn't, then you should definitely stay tuned as we begin. Brian Martin Ortega was born on the 21st of February 1991 in the city of Los Angeles, California. He grew up with his Mexican parents in a Section 8 housing project in San Pedro. At the age of 5, Brian started training MMA at Al Martinez Muay Thai kickboxing. At the age of 13, he started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy. It was at this point Brian was faced with his first hurdle of his life. He had a friend who introduced him to illegal fights, or smoker fights as they were called back then. Brian was only 15 years old at the time, but still, he felt he was tough, so he decided to participate. According to Brian himself, he was scared at his first smoker fight. He was 15 years old going against an 18-year-old. What else made this fight dangerous was there were no gloves, mouth guards, or any form of safety protections. Everything was allowed. However, in the second round, his fear vanished, leading him to beat his opponent to a pulp. He eventually won the fight, and from that day, decided to stick to MMA. It was an amazing experience, and from that moment on, Brian focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's becoming a better fighter. At the age of 17, Brian began his professional career in MMA by fighting for regional promotions in Southern California. It was also at this stage of his life that he met legendary boxing coach James Larson. James Larson played an important role in turning Brian's striking skills into a refined blend of both power and speed. Brian's training with James and other coaches made him amass an 8-fight win streak before he joined the UFC in April 2014. His first fight in the UFC was nothing short of awesome. You could see the confidence in his strikes and movements. He faced Mike Bellator and won in a first round submission. Cool, right? Well, it wasn't. In a post-fight drug screening, Brian tested positive for having consumed steroids before the fight. I have to be honest, it was really awful for Brian. He immediately got a lot of hate from fans and the management of the UFC for pulling off such a move in just his first fight. He got fined $2,500 and was banned for 9 good months. His next fight took place on the 6th of June 2015. Brian was determined to win both the fight and the love of his fans back. Thankfully, he did just that. He beat Thiago Tavares via TKO in the 3rd round. Brian won his next 3 fights. He was more brutal than ever. He didn't allow his rough start to impact his mindset once he was in the octagon. He became a force of destruction in the featherweight division until he went head-to-head with Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was worse than a beast in the octagon. He was extremely experienced in his career, had done lots of damage to the bodies of all his previous opponents, and was set to make Ortega beg for mercy once they stepped in the octagon. I bet almost everyone doubted in their minds that Ortega could pull off a victory in this one, but his fight was an absolute game changer for Ortega. Ortega started by putting pressure on Edgar. He stunned Edgar multiple times before he gave a killer strike that knocked out Edgar in just the first round. The whole crowd went wild. No one had ever finished Edgar in the history of his MMA career till that night. It was a huge win for Brian Ortega. Everyone was pleased by Brian's impressive win streak. He was finally set to go against a UFC featherweight champion, Max Holloway, for his title. But before we talk about that, kindly scroll down, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on any of our videos. Now, Brian versus Holloway. I've got to give credit for Brian for putting up one of his best performances in that fight. He matched strike for strike with Holloway, but the fight ended with a doctor's stoppage against Brian, so Holloway retained the title and Brian technically lost the fight. It was really sad because Brian had waited a long time for that moment. After that fight, he took a break from fighting for almost 2 years before making a return in December 2020. But before his return, he decided to try out a new career by entering Hollywood. Brian starred in the 2020 Hollywood film titled Tax Collector. He played the role of the antagonist gang's lieutenant. I highly recommend you go see that movie. When he returned to the UFC though, he was slated to face the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung. Chan Sung Jung was no easy opponent because he'd won his last 2 bouts by first round finish. On the other hand, Brian hadn't experienced any MMA action in almost 2 years, so the odds were not in Brian's favour, and almost everyone felt he'd be out of shape to face someone as lethal as Jung. However, Brian debunked that notion by pounding Chan Sung Jung with hefty punches and blazing front kicks. He also gave multiple slams to Jung, which earned him the victory via unanimous decision. It was pretty obvious Brian still had the skills in the bag. Therefore, he decided to challenge Alexander Volkanovski for the UFC Featherweight Championship. Alexander Volkanovski is another menace in the UFC Featherweight division. There's a lot to say about this guy and how beastly he is. We have another video in our channel that uncovers the true story of Alexander, so make sure you go check that out once you're done here. The build up to this fight was insane. At some point, the trash talking made it seem like there was a lot more on the line than just the title. The fight between Brian and Alexander took place at UFC 266 on the 25th September 2021. It was a pure show of strength, skill and technicality. Both men weren't willing to give up. It was really close, but Brian lost the fight to Alexander. Brian is one heck of a fighter to be able to match the fighting techniques of Alexander. The fight was simply one for the record books. One thing you need to know about Brian Ortega is that he loves to have fun, and with the whopping amount he's earned from fighting in the UFC, he's definitely living that luxurious life. Before we talk about how much fun he's having with his salary, if you're a new subscriber, kindly comment "I subbed" in the comments below and earn a chance to win our monthly shoutout contest. We appreciate you joining our MMA family and we'd love to know you better, so go comment "I subbed" now. Brian earned roughly $16,000 in his promotional UFC debut, and ever since then, his paycheck has been on a steady increase. His highest salary was for his fight against Volkanovski, and even though he lost, he earned $330,000. While his second highest payout was against Holloway, where he earned $320,000. His total net worth after this stands at $2 million. He has 2 daughters with his former girlfriend Stephanie Roberts, but is currently dating a UFC fighter, Tracy Cortez. Brian is a huge fan of automobiles and fashion, but he constantly gives back to his community. He has a foundation where he helps kids who grew up in a rough neighbourhood as he did make the right decisions. Brian Ortega is a phenomenal fighter who rose from the bottom. I can't wait to see that UFC Featherweight Championship in his arms. Thanks for sticking with us till the end of the video. If you loved this video, kindly check out the other action-packed videos showing on your screen. I hope I see you in the next one, so bye for now.